Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to another episode of what? The Strange Death of Alfred Hunt Howell. Yes. We're so happy to have you guys here today. And boy, we got hopefully what's going to be a great episode today. We have today the first person who has bravely come forward with tales of Nikolaj Amann. Yes. It has happened, folks. As you all know, when we were doing Son of Sam, we started out that endeavor, well, just basically talking out of books and newspapers. And you all know how that evolved. It ended up evolving into talking to firsthand primary sources. And of course, the big thing that I realized doing that video series on Son of Sam was that if you want to find out about a crime, if you want to find out about any historical crime, you need to, as much as possible, speak to the actual principals involved. You need to speak to people who were directly involved, people who knew the criminals, and so on and so forth. Because that's really the only way that we can really, truly get a picture of the human element in all this. So, of course, that's what we're doing today. It's so important to really get these stories on the record, and boy, are we excited today. So of course, we've been having a great time with this Howell case, folks. It has been fantastic. We've been looking at the crime, the strange death. We've started to get into the forensics a little bit. We've done this parallel track about the Howell family and who these people are in terms of world history, and boy, it's been super fascinating. But we were stuck and mired in newspaper and book reviews, essentially. And as fun as that stuff is, and as great as that stuff is to do, we are super duper excited to have, well, the first oral history on tape today. So we have a lot to get to today, and I don't think we need to belabor the point anymore. So everybody, would you please welcome to our airwaves for the first time, and hopefully not the last, Alex from Greystone Avenue. Yes, Alex.
How you doing, everybody?
So Alex, so obviously we're seeing your arms today. You you didn't want to show your face, and we totally get it. And we are very sensitive to privacy and all those issues with that. So we just want to say welcome to the airwaves, and be comfortable, and hopefully this will be a free-ranging conversation. Now, real quick, before we get into the discussion, I just want to show the audience how well you and I met through recently through social media. I put up a post asking people if anybody knew Nikolai, and literally within 10 minutes, I was already getting hits, and yours came in, and this one blew me away. And real quick, before we go any further, I just want to read it to the audience for those who have not yet seen this. We've already shown this on 2 shows, but this came from Alex. Hi, Manny. I did not want to post in the group, but I knew Nikolai during that time. I grew up on 238th Street, and he started showing up and hanging around our corner in front of the pizza shop. I remember he was stealing Lincoln Town cars and driving around 231st and picking up fares like he was a cab. Actually, super smart if you think about it. And we knew he was robbing houses. The rumor was that he broke into a place on Palisades and the person was home and he hit them with a lamp or something and killed them. I don't even remember hearing about Alfred Hunt Howell. I have no idea how or why he randomly started showing up on our block, but looking back on it, I haven't thought about him a lot since then. He was probably just trying to find some other like-minded kids to try and pull some heists with. When he got locked up, nobody was surprised. Actually, we were all probably more thankful that he didn't talk any of us into breaking into anything with him. He may have been around us for about a month or so, maybe 2 at the most, just a blip on the radar. I hope this helps. And of course, Alex, that blew me away because it jibed pretty much completely with this little blurb from the police reports about Nikolai driving a black Lincoln Town car, rear window missing. Nikolai states to redacted here that he was robbing a house on Palisade when he had to hit an old man over the head with his gun. He thinks the old man died from his injuries. So you and I, of course, spoke, and we kind of sniffed each other out a little bit. And I knew within 1 minute that you were the real deal. It turns out that you and I share a childhood friend whose name we're not going to mention today. And of course, you knew another one of my childhood best friends. I was best friends with the guy in 6th grade to about high school, and you knew him when we were all in our 20s, and you told me some stories that rang true about him. So welcome. We before we get into the stuff about Nikolai, I just want to briefly talk to the audience about, well, this crazy neighborhood called Riverdale. And you had mentioned you and I grew up only a block apart. You'll talk to the audience about that a little bit while I get up Google Earth and show everybody where we're talking about.
Yeah, so how we doing, everybody? So we both grew up on 238th Street.
Correct.
His 238th Street was kind of split a little bit. And if you show it on Google Earth, you can see.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to
Once
it
you
right
get to
now.
238th and Riverdale Avenue, you got to go a little bit north to get to the 238th Street, where it kind of picks up on the other side.
Correct. So for everybody's sake, let me just get to here. So I grew up over here on 238th in this building here between 230. This is 238th Street right here, and here's Riverdale Avenue, and 238th, as Alex said, then goes down this street right here. It kind of like makes a 90-degree turn, and then this road down here is 238th. So you grew up where exactly?
So I grew up on 238th Street and Greystone Avenue.
Right here on Greystone Avenue.
Yeah.
So you got to tell us which building, if you don't mind.
Oh, so actually, if you go between, so other,
the other side,
backwards here, yeah, other way, that way.
Okay.
Go straight down.
Hold on, there.
Yep, keep going. All right, you see those 3-story walk-ups on your right-hand side?
Wait, these over here?
Those right there, correct.
These.
Correct.
So, it's interesting because you grew up exactly across the street. I don't want to give the guy's last name, but you grew up exactly across the street from one of my best friends named Greg, who lived here, I believe. Did you know a cat named Greg? We don't have to give his last name, but
I did.
Yeah, he lived there briefly. He was only there a couple of years, but he was one of my best friends too. So you grew up in this neighborhood, and just so everybody's sake can see how close you and I grew up with one another. You grew up right over here, and I grew up right down here. But you were mentioning something, and you put it much better than I ever could. The difference in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, even two different worlds.
Yeah, this is the building I grew up in. And what made it two different worlds, Alex?
I think a lot of it was the people. Yeah, it was. We were always kind of looked at the Greystone Avenue kids as the wrong side of the tracks in Riverdale, and I think a lot of us really identified with that, and we took it to heart, and we said, okay, you want to see wrong side of the tracks? We'll show you wrong side of the tracks.
That's super interesting because it's fun. Well, first of all, DJ asked how many years are we apart? We're 1 year apart in age. Yeah. You're 1 year younger than me. And interestingly enough, you and I never crossed paths, but we have so many other people in common that it's really very cool to have you on here. But Riverdale is kind of a strange place. It's all about the hills, right? It's all about down the hill versus up the hill.
Yeah.
And if you look here, everybody in the audience, Riverdale Avenue, which is right, like I grew up right here, and then Riverdale Avenue goes down here, and then down the hill is what's literally what it's called. Down the hill right here, this hill right here. Let me just get rid of that. And then all of a sudden you're in a really kind of not a bad area, but a little bit more sketchy. And then Greystone's the same way, because if you look at it, it kind of, let me just quickly, it goes down the hill too.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were growing up, Greystone was always kind of known as a rough area, even though, again, it was only a block away. And that's what made it so interesting. So what was sociologically, what was it like down there?
It really wasn't, honestly, probably wasn't much different than what you guys, economically and all that stuff. I mean, we were a block away, for God's sakes, but it was just I think it was just for whatever reason, we had more of a street kid mentality down there at that time. I mean, you can even see it. You just look at Greystone Avenue and
Yeah,
it looks different.
it does. It has more of that Bronx, that what people traditionally think of as the Bronx look. And of course, Greystone Avenue. So you grew up down this block over here.
Hmm.
And then Nikolai grew up over here. Let's get
Hmm.
to Nikolai's building. Whoops. Alex show Nikolai. So Nikolai grew up, of course, here at 3900 Greystone. Now, growing up, did you have any experience in this building at all?
I didn't. No, that was like, walking by it. And you and I spoke when we first talked. Really, I didn't know any kids that lived in that building. Um, our friend zone kind of ended right there at Dash Place, which is, if
Right
you want to pull
here.
that up, also.
Yeah, so this is Nikolai's building, and then interestingly enough, so here's Dash Place right here. This block down here.
Yeah,
Whoops. That goes down here. And so that was your sort of your northern terminus.
yeah, that was it. And I mean, and oddly enough, Nikolai's building borders Fieldston, which is like the richest neighborhood in New York City.
Correct. For everybody that's another thing that makes this neighborhood so interesting is that you're living here on Greystone with all the tough. I mean, I always associated with tough Irish kids, but we'll talk
That's
about that.
exactly what it was.
Yeah, exactly. And
Exactly
then
what it was.
and then a block away, you had this private community called Fieldston. These are actually private roads here. You're allowed to drive through there. But yeah, Alex is right. Very wealthy. And then across the highway is the Henry Hudson Parkway, which runs north south right here, and that came into play in Nikolai's confession the other day. Here's where we have all of the Howell home right over here, and the Dodge mansion. So it's a really interesting community that pairs the uber elite, uber rich, with like the more upper middle class of my area right down here, and then one block away we have
Slumming.
Grace. It's kind of slumming it. Yeah, it is kind of slumming it, to be honest. And you blew me away because you told me there was actually a brothel on Riverdale Avenue. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I like to make fun of my mom. She owned a business above the video store. Um,
Now, the video
and
store for everybody was in a building that was right
yeah,
here.
yeah,
It's
there
been
was that.
torn down.
Yeah, right there. That was the exact. So my mother owned a business upstairs years and years and years ago, and the business was actually geared towards children. And then they left the neighborhood. They retired and got out of New York. And I just happened to Google it one day, and I saw, I don't know if it was in the Riverdale Press online or something like that, but they got busted. It was a Asian massage parlor. So I like to go, tease my mom, that they really really ruined the vibe in there for you. You were teaching children, and then I mean they couldn't have gone polar opposite.
Right, right. Now, Alex, were you born in the United States or did you
Yeah.
come here? You
Yep.
were.
Nope. Born
Okay.
here.
And ethnically, I mean, not to get it too detailed, but ethnically, what like you weren't an Irish kid, right?
No, and that was one of the I drank like an Irish kid.
And you knew, and you of course hung out with all the Irish
Yeah,
kids.
I mean that's what I mean. Greystone was Greystone 238th Street, Waldo Avenue was the Irish. We called it Irish Harlem.
Really, you did?
That's what we used to call it.
That's
That in
funny.
Kingsbridge, yeah, Irish Harlem.
Yeah, and Bailey Avenue, which is down that way, is like
Yeah.
super duper Irish. And that's where a couple of other mutual acquaintance friends of ours, more of an acquaintance of mine, but a good friend of yours. So right here is the pizza shop that we'll talk about a little later that you had mentioned that you used to hang out in front of.
Hmm.
But and we're all here to hear about the Nikolai stories, but I'm interested in trajectory. I'm interested in how your path and Nikolai's path ended up coming together in those fateful whatever weeks of 1996. How did you end up in that milieu where you were even being thought of by Nikolai to be recruited into a burglary ring? Talk to us a little bit about your background and how you came to be in Nikolai's
Yeah.
crosshairs.
I think you and I talked about this as well. I think in the neighborhood, and I'm not just including Greystone, I mean, in kind of Riverdale in general, in that area, I think everybody, it was almost like once everybody got to junior high school, which was 141,
Mm-hmm.
and junior high school 141 was really the first place that, I mean, it sounds awful, but the first place that kids from Riverdale were
Hung out with the
really
brothers. Hung out with the brothers.
integrated with the kids from, Kingsbridge and Marble Hill and all that stuff. So
I have a quick aside on that. I went to PS24. I don't know where you went, but that's the grade school right before 141. And we were
mhm.
so sheltered, Alex, that I remember the first day of 7th grade, I saw a girl smoking a cigarette, and I had an apoplectic shock. I was like, "What? People my age are smoking?" That just shows how sheltered I was. But meanwhile, you're down here on Greystone Avenue, and that was probably old hat too. But you're absolutely right. Getting to 141 is where you started to hang out with, you started to mingle with kids from down the hill, from other parts of the Bronx, kids who weren't necessarily maybe good influences. So carry on that.
So yeah, so I went to PS 81, which is in North Riverdale.
Right.
Um, and and so yeah, when we got to 141, which junior high school 141, again, it was the first time a lot of us were all mingled together with kids from, down the hill,
Right.
even down the hill from us. And for those people that don't know, Marble Hill are the projects
I'll show
on
them.
225th Street.
They're down here. Hold on. These are the Marble Hill projects right here. I actually went to nursery school there.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, these are the Marble Hill projects, very close by, down on Broadway. Yeah, and a lot of kids from here went to 141.
Yeah, so it was really the first time that, and also, a lot of the kids that grew up on 231st Street. 231st Street was, it was always kind of like 231st Street is the real Irish hood.
Yeah,
And
we'll get to 231st right here.
yeah, and it was almost like 238th Street. All the kids on 238th Street, where I lived, were almost like the younger brothers of all the kids on 231st Street, if you will.
Mm.
It was like a breeding ground.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, when you get to junior high school, I think a lot of us had to make a decision on which, you know, I had a police officer one time said something to me, and it was like 4 in the morning, and we were up to no good, and they pulled us over, and couldn't prove anything, but he said to us, he goes, and it stuck with me all these years. He goes, at this hour of the night, there's only two types of people out. You're either a perpetrator or you're a victim. Which one are you guys? And he knew which ones we were, but he couldn't catch it. And that's kind of how it was in 7th grade. You had to decide, were you going to be the perpetrator or were you going to be the victim? And
Interesting.
I decided to be a perpetrator.
Really? Now, had
Yeah,
you
at that
already?
point, and I mean, it didn't start off, 7th grade, burglarizing stuff. It was, smoking pot and cutting school and, the normal dumb stuff,
Right.
and then that just kind of snowballed.
Just so everybody knows, here we'll show junior high school 141. This is it.
It
right
looks like
here.
a prison.
Yeah, this is it right here. This is where I went to junior high school, and this is where Alex went to junior high school. And this, I'll never forget. It was right here, walking out of these steps, where I saw the girl smoking the cigarette, and I flipped out. So had you already been getting into trouble at this point, like
I mean,
before
nothing
this?
crazy. No, nothing crazy. I might have ditched school a few times or stuff like that, but nothing that was, a sign of things to come, if you will, Yeah, there's 141.
Yeah, I forgot to show it before. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys. It was right here where I saw the girl, and that was 1986. So, all right. So basically before you get to 141, you're, a Greystone Avenue kid, a little rough around the edges, but not yet, into any sort of life of, well, let's just say it, crime. So,
No, not at all.
so what started happening at 141?
I just, I chose the wrong crowd, and I don't even, I hate saying it that way. I just took a different path. I
Uh-huh.
hate calling it the wrong crowd because, or the wrong this or the wrong that, because everything brings you to the exact point that you are today.
Right.
And so I take back that statement. It wasn't the wrong crowd. It was just, it was just, a crowd that wasn't making the best decisions at the time.
Right. And so what were some of these decisions?
I mean, listen, in 141, it was your basic, cutting school, smoking pot, um, you know, drinking beers, staying out late, graffiti, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, it wasn't, insane. And even in high school, we weren't like, it was just basically literally it was on par with that basically through high school. You know,
Mhm.
it was, just partying and hanging out and doing graffiti and so on and so forth. I mean, even throughout high school, like we weren't like breaking into I wasn't anyway breaking into cars in high school and all that kind of stuff. I mean, fighting on the corner, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, just normal what we thought was just normal, what kids did because that's what everybody did on our block.
So then things start escalating?
So for myself, so I actually, and I told you I went to one of the specialized high schools, and after I got out of 141, I went to one of the specialized high schools in Manhattan. So I
Mhm.
didn't go to John F. Kennedy,
Right.
which was our local high school, which was
Terrible, like,
I
yeah.
think at the time was literally like one of the worst high schools in the city.
It's right here. Let's get to it. Yeah,
And they've since closed it, if I'm not mistaken.
it would no, 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 it's still open, but the thing about Kennedy High School here and here it is right here for everybody to see. This high school was like it was like the boogeyman. Like if you're going to go to
Talk about a
Kennedy if you're
prison.
not a good right, yeah, you keep on misbehaving, you're going to end up in Kennedy. Yeah, and book club warrior here, who was a former 52nd precinct policeman, Perp
Yeah,
Academy.
I mean, it was. And so, the funny thing was, so I went to high school in Manhattan and, I did enough to get by. I didn't flunk out. I graduated on time. I got into a college. Um, um, but I would leave, but I was still friends with all the neighborhood kids. I didn't really hang out with kids from high school. And
Hmm.
I would leave school early. I would get out at, 1 o'clock or whatever. And then I would go hang out with the kids my friends from Kennedy in the parking lot. And then we would go to Ewan Hill, which,
Well, that's another place that I wanted to talk about because
yeah.
Ewan Park just came up in Nikolai's first confession, Ewan Park, which is right here. So everybody, just so we can orient ourselves, here's Kennedy again, right here. Here is up the hill going to Riverdale. Here's my apartment building right here. Here's where right down this block here is where Alex lived, right, right around here, and then here is Ewan Park right here. And so it's basically at the base of 231st Street, which is that neighborhood that's kind of rough again, just like a little bit even more rough than Greystone Avenue. And this is one of the parks that Nikolai went to right before he did this alleged murder at this house. So talk to us a little bit about Ewan Park.
So Ewan Park, here was the good thing about Ewan Park. And this is what we used to do at Ewan. On top of Ewan Hill is Johnson Avenue, which
Right
is
here.
the main thoroughfare through Riverdale where all the shops and all that kind of stuff. Um, but there was benches and everything at the top of Ewan Park.
Right here.
Yeah, and everybody used to hang out there. It was a spot to hang out, and you can see there's little stairs right there. There was basketball courts. Now
Right down here.
Ewan Park is literally just almost like a 90-degree hill. It's where we all used to
Yeah.
go sledding when we were kids.
Right. Exactly.
Um, but it was very dangerous to go sledding because there was park benches at the bottom and then parked cars and then
I'll get
Riverdale
right to
Avenue for like
exactly.
buses
And
and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, they used to tell us like there was always the urban myth of the kid
Oh,
who
that
got
kid
his
that
head.
died.
Yeah, the kid that
Yeah.
died and got his head chopped off.
Yeah.
You heard the you heard the same thing.
Yeah. It's like the blue van myth.
Exactly. The black, yeah, that was what that were like kidnapping kids.
Yeah, everybody saw a blue van in 5th grade and they would run for their lives.
So that's right here, and it doesn't look as steep from this picture, but
It's pretty steep.
it is pretty damn steep.
And
Yeah,
when you're going down it on a garbage bag or whatever you could find, I mean, it's dangerous.
exactly.
So
So,
here's what we used Ewan Park for. The thing about Ewan Park was for basically it was our cut through when we needed to get away.
mhm,
So like if we wanted to ditch a cab, like which for those that don't know is like, you get a cab ride and you don't pay for it before Uber. um, we would take a cab from wherever we were and we would have them drop us off at the top of Ewan Hill. And then we would just run down Ewan Hill. And how are they going to get us? They got to drive all the way around, all that stuff. And they didn't know where they were.
they never would, and you could just hang out
They
in the
never
middle
would.
of this.
And then it was like rocks and little tree patches and all that kind of stuff in the middle of Ewan Hill that you could just camp out on. Nobody would ever find you.
Right, like right up in this area here.
Yeah, correct.
So did things get more serious as you got a little older?
So yeah, I actually, when I went away to college, believe it or not, my criminal escapades, if you will, mostly took off when I went to college. I went to college in Virginia, and I got down there, and by that point, I was drinking a lot and smoking a lot of pot, and we were doing hallucinogens and all that kind of stuff, but nothing crazy. And I went down to college, and with every good intention of doing well,
Mhm.
and I got to in Virginia, and I found the wrong kids again, if you will, wrong
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
Uh, and or they found me, whichever way you want to look at it.
Right.
And started selling pot and all that kind of stuff. And then I realized that the drugs that I could get in New York City were half the price of the drugs in Virginia. So I started driving back to New York,
Okay.
buying stuff and going back to Virginia and selling it.
Okay.
And then from there, it just kind of snowballed, Um, and then, so I was in college in Virginia for 2 years. So, and then I came back. So I came back in 94, 95 or something like that. And yeah, and then basically the next 6 years of my life were just, you know, insane.
So wait, so you left college, you didn't even finish college
No,
and
yeah, I've got 3 credits
in 2 years? Oh
in
my
2 years.
god.
Yeah. I
Alright,
like
so
to tell
yeah, you
people my blood alcohol level was higher than my GPA.
so you really were driving back and forth and
Yeah, I really
doing
was.
all this stuff. Alright, so then alright, so you started going down this dark path. What,
Yeah,
like,
slippery slope.
to the extent that you're comfortable talking about it, just give the
Yeah,
audience
so,
an idea, like,
listen, just
where'd
to
you
qualify a little bit also, I left the neighborhood in 2001, got out of there, and got my life straight. I've been sober for 22 years.
Mhm.
I'm married, I have a child, I coach his T-ball team, I have a career,
Right,
so
right.
um, it was, I'm one of the lucky ones that got out.
Right.
But I did the work when I got out. I didn't just come
Mhm.
down and start doing the same stuff. I worked on myself.
Now, had you gone, like, to be a, like, full-blown addiction of drugs
Oh
or
yeah,
anything?
absolutely. And that's where the root of all of my stuff was back then. Um, so yeah, when I came back to the Bronx, I was staying with my parents. My parents threw me out of the house. Um, I wasn't allowed anywhere near them, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was, I was couch surfing for a while. I had apartments, this, that, and the other.
Uh-huh.
Um, And then, slowly but surely, it started off with just like breaking into cars,
Uh-huh.
and, and then it went from breaking into cars to stealing cars. And, and sometimes we would, rip stuff out of them to sell. And then sometimes we would just complete just assholes and we would just drive them around and crash them and then ditch them, you
Now,
know?
was there like an organized ring happening? Like,
No,
did
no,
you?
no, no, no. We weren't that smart.
So if you stole a car, what would you do with it? Like, how would you get
It
like?
depended, a lot of times we would just drive it. So here's what's funny. At that time in New York City in the mid 90s, a lot of times the more um, kind of obvious you were, the less obvious it was.
Mm,
You know, I
okay,
mean, if you just drove a car like it was yours, they wouldn't, it was yours. And then if you felt like it was getting hot, you just didn't go back to it.
interesting. And even with the same plates on it that you stole,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a free for all, and I think at the time, Riverdale used to have those stolen car checkpoints all over the place,
Exactly in the beginning of the
and I mean,
Giuliani
I had
era.
friends that like were in stolen cars and like got stuck in a checkpoint and just got out and left the car.
So DJ asks here, no chop shop. So you weren't doing this for people who were asking, who were like paying you
No,
to do
no. I
this.
mean, we knew people that had chop shops down, Hunts Point at that time was notorious for it and all that kind of stuff. There was none in the neighborhood, no, that I knew of.
Uh-huh.
Um, and but I mean, there was like guys that knew a guy that so we would rip the you rip the stereo out and go sell it, or you could the airbags were big at that day back then. You used to
Right.
steal airbags and you give it to the kid and he'd come back 12 hours later and he went and sold them and gave you your cut or whatever it was. But no, I've never personally been in a chop shop,
Uh-huh.
you know, not that I wouldn't have.
Right. Right. But it just never entered
Yeah, just
into your
you know,
realm. So what else? I mean, just let's immerse ourselves because
yeah. I
we're
mean, it was graffiti, it was drinking, it was fighting, it was stealing cars, it was selling drugs, um, it was you know but listen, and we were not an organized
right.
there
Right.
was we weren't a it wasn't the Greystone cartel by any means. I mean, we were dumb
And
kids.
what was the mix of kids? Was it mainly Irish kids
Yeah,
or
mainly Irish kids, some Albanians, and some stragglers here and there,
uh-huh.
but mainly Irish kids and stuff, yeah.
Now the Albanians, where'd they come from?
God only knows.
And they were hanging out on 238th and
Yeah,
Greystone?
there was some Albanian kids in the neighborhood, and there was all the Albanian kids from 231st Street, and I don't know if anybody knows any Albanians, but they're all cousins. Yeah,
I went out with an Albanian
yeah,
once.
they're all cousins.
That's hilarious.
So, one guy shows up and then his cousin shows up and then, and then so on and so forth. And then one guy disappears and then comes back 3 years later with a different name. I mean, it was literally,
Oh my god.
yeah,
That's crazy. So
yeah.
the Albanians were on a seemingly on a whole other level.
Yeah. And I mean, and they have a reputation. They have a reputation in that part of Europe, you know?
Yeah, I mean, listen, well, I went to Bronx Science, another specialized high
Yeah.
school, and even into Bronx Science, every now and then you'd hear this rumor: the Albanians are coming. They're coming after school. You better watch out. They're gonna beat everyone up, and we would be scared shitless of that. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean that was kind of the way it was with the
No, the
Albanians, and
Albanians are crazy.
yeah, there's no joke. They're no joke, and they still have that reputation, of course, today. And of course, they've been doing this is kind of their thousands of years in their
Yeah.
culture. So, so all right. So you have your little crew there. Is it basically the same cast of characters, or is it
Yeah.
a
All the same
revolving
cast
door?
of characters. We were actually a pretty, we all grew up together, knew each other our whole lives.
Uh huh.
So we were a pretty, um, tight knit group,
Right. Right.
and if one kid didn't have money this week, we'd take care of him, and if I didn't have money the next week, they'd take care of me. It was very familial,
Hmm.
an honor amongst thieves, if you will.
Did this group ever get into things like breaking into houses and
Yeah,
stuff
I'm
like that?
sure. I mean, so, listen, like, there's stories that I tell. A buddy of mine and myself wanted, at one point, we wanted a nitrous tank.
We just went to the village and bought them, bro.
Yeah, the whippets, the little crackers. But we
yeah.
wanted a whole tank. So, and this is, I can laugh about this story. It was one of the snowstorms that we had, 95 or 90, whatever it was.
Uh-huh.
And he and I were out at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we hit about, so, the air conditioning units on first floors. Remember, all these buildings used to have dental offices. They probably still do,
Still do.
on the first floors.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was a scrawny, skinny kid, and he was a big kid, and he would pull up the air conditioning units,
Uh-huh.
and I would climb into the dental office
Oh
and
my
then buzz
God.
him in the front door. And then he would come in, and we would rummage through to try to find a nitrous tank. And, finally we found one, and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and both him and I are just walking from the footbridge on 235th Street
Uh-huh.
all the way down, and he lived on Tibbet.
Okay, yeah, that's down the hill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so down
yeah.
the hill. So we had to go down the city steps in the middle of a snowstorm at 4 o'clock in the morning with the nitrous tank on our shoulders.
That must have been pretty heavy.
It was
Was it at
heavy.
least worth it? Like,
It
did you
was
get?
worth it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I used to love whippets.
So,
I
stuff like, yeah, they were hippie crack.
right. I never would do them again after high school. I mean,
Yeah.
when I think about that, it's insane. But yeah, as Paul Hart said, laughing gas, the best high I ever had as a kid. I got to admit, I loved it too. But I'm not. I shudder when I think about how many of those that I did.
Yeah, so it was stuff like that. So I mean, it was stuff that a person on the, with the good morals at the time would look at us and think that we were like career criminals and, awful people.
Hmm.
But people that were in that world, we were small time, man. You know?
Right, right. And it was, and as you said, it wasn't this organized thing.
No, no, it was, we got a hair up our ass, and we'd be like,
All
let's go get a
right.
whippet, or sometimes it'd be like, I'd be on 231st Street and I didn't feel like driving home, so we'd steal a car.
Oh my God. You've definitely stolen one of my dad's cars. I know it for
Probably.
sure. So,
Sorry.
so I
Sorry,
mean, he
Mr.
got
Grossman.
every one of his cars got stolen. Weird though. He found quite a few of them, and now that I'm thinking, yeah,
You never want to find them.
why? What happens to them?
Because people destroy them. Every time somebody was like, yeah, if somebody steals your car, you don't want it back.
You
Trust me.
don't want it back, yeah. Just the foul fluids alone, probably all this stuff.
Yeah.
But all right, so we're getting close. If Eric's watching, Eric, please sign in because we're getting close to Nikolai. So basically, what I wanted to do with this little discussion about Riverdale is to show the audience that this community that is known well throughout, all quite a bit of New York City, as a very upscale neighborhood, actually has a dark side to it. And a lot of the focus of this dark side was down at this intersection of Greystone, 238th Street, Waldo Avenue, all of this area where Alex grew up. And so you're hanging with your friends,
Hmm.
and Nikolai is doing whatever he's doing with his friends, and somehow your world came together
Yeah.
in 96. But before we get there, let's introduce Eric, the great Eric Galati, who's going to be part of this conversation with us today, because I just love having Eric around, and he has some insights that I would never have and questions that I would never think to ask. And so welcome, Eric. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. And we reciprocate. Good to see you, Alex.
How you doing, bud?
Very, very interesting. God bless you for having the strength to recover with everything
Yeah.
and having a family and so forth.
Thank you.
So everybody here, of course, is interested in Alex's story and Riverdale, but we really want to know, well, Nikolai stories as well. So, well, you're the first person to come forward. So basically, the floor is yours. Before we get into any questions, we just kind of want you to tell your story about Nikolai, how he came around. Basically from start to finish, and take as long as you want, my friend.
All right. So, again, when I saw that Facebook post that you did, it really like stirred up whatever. I was like, holy shit, I'd kind of forgotten about this kid, because he really was just a blip on our radar, you know.
Mhm.
And even though he grew up literally on my same street, like I didn't know him, you know,
Right.
like didn't know him. And you know, it was, you know, for whatever reason, and I don't know if he, you know, I'm sure he, you know, like I said, man, you know, everybody in that neighborhood knows each other. It's, you know, it's like what is it, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I mean that's how it is, you know. I'm convinced that Manny and I have walked by each other at least. I mean, you're a
Absolutely.
year older than me. We were in 141 at the same time.
Absolutely. If I saw
You,
pictures of you as a kid, I'd probably be like, "Yep, I remember this," you know,
yeah,
because
I really haven't aged much.
neither have I.
Yeah, I just got a, you know, a couple more pounds on me, but
Agree.
you know, he really was just a blip on the radar, man. And I couldn't tell you why he started hanging out on the corner, or who brought him to the corner, or he was driving by one night and maybe saw somebody that he knew on the corner.
Now,
But
what corner are we talking
on
about?
238th and Waldo, in front of the pizza shop.
In front of the pizza shop. I'm gonna get back to that for the
So
audience's
yeah,
sake.
which is Goodfellas now, but it was and forever will be Luigi's.
Always will be Luigi's.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. So I'll get to it. Carry on with this, with the, you know,
So,
telling us.
you know, I think one more thing about the neighborhood. The neighborhood was in it was a series of corners that, in my world anyway, was a series of corners of parks where kids hung out.
So here's the corner in question. And
Yeah, right there.
it was once called Luigi's, and Luigi's is, yeah, it's forever enshrined in all of our hearts, because even though I lived, you know, way up here, I was always at Luigi's. That was my
Best
spot.
pizza in the neighborhood.
The best, definitely.
But you know, and the funny thing was I always got in trouble, and I think I told you this. My father used to go down and drink a beer and have a slice of pizza and speak Italian to Luigi, and then Luigi would rat on me because I would do dumb shit in front of the pizza shop. So I'd come home and my dad would yell at me because, you know, Luigi told him I was out smoking cigarettes at 13 years old in front of the pizza shop. So
Right.
another story. So there used to be a payphone right in front of Luigi's. So yeah,
Right about
literally
here.
right there.
Yeah.
And at that time, we all had pagers, and you used to be able to call the payphones. So it was literally like a network of, like, there was a payphone in front of the place on Johnson Avenue that we knew the number to. There's some kids used to hang out, and it used to be also what was that other pizza shop? Pizzazz, right? On
I don't
235th
remember.
Street used to have the video games in the back.
Yes, yes. I don't remember it as pizzazz, but
Yeah.
you know, sometimes my memory's fuzzy on that stuff.
So, and then there was the K-Pop Street kids who used to hang out in front of the park. There was a payphone there. There was the 231st Street kids. There was a payphone there. And literally, we would call each other on the payphones to see who was hanging out, or if you needed anything or anything like that. And I'd be like, all right, cool, I'll be down there. Exactly.
Wow.
That's how the drug dealers did their deals. Yep.
So you were
So,
using these payphones and
yeah, it
pagers,
was,
and
you know, it was just pay, and everybody would just call the, you know, so like once Luigi would close and the cops would kick us off the corner, you know, we'd call, you know, hey, anybody at K-Pop? Yeah, who's there? Oh, this kid's there, and we'd go over to K-Pop and hang out. You know, or 231st Street. You know, hey, and they literally, you would answer the phone, 238th Street.
So you were really hooked up with the sort of the underground, let's just say, criminal network
Well,
in.
we were the underground criminal network.
Okay. All right. And very interesting. So now, how does Nikolai enter the lair?
So again, you know, mind you, this was, you know, 25 plus years ago. You know, I was pretty fuzzy back then, memory wise, and my natural state was just fuzziness. So, but you know, he just appeared kind of almost, honestly.
Alone or with other people?
Yeah, alone. Yeah, no. Yeah, he wasn't like, he was never with somebody or anything like that. And, and again, I don't know if I'm sure he knew people on the corner. He probably saw, either saw somebody one night or whatever it was. Now, here's the thing also, I don't remember if he was doing drugs and stuff with us. I don't remember.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to speculate and say, well, he probably was because we all were, you know what I mean? But I don't remember getting high with him at all.
Okay.
But I do remember, he would show up and he was in that Lincoln. And if it wasn't the same Lincoln, I thought it was, my memory says it was multiple Lincolns. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember him stealing Lincolns, or at least stealing a Lincoln. And also back then, for those that don't know, Lincoln Town cars were the cab of choice, the
Right.
car service of choice.
Right.
back
Everybody
then.
drove a Lincoln Town Car. It was
Everybody drove a
luxurious.
Lincoln Town car. So it was
Right.
either yellow cabs with a meter in it, or a Lincoln Town car that you haggled the price.
Right. Right. The gypsy cabs.
The gypsy cabs, or the seaman cabs. The Dominican cab car company used to call up and they'd be like, 1 minute, and literally you would have to run downstairs or he would drive off.
Right. Right.
So back then, it was a racket. I mean, he made money that way. He would go, pick up cab fares on 231st Street and drive around and and be like, $20, and the guy would give him $20,
Right. So now this is one thing I just want to come back to. You mentioned that he was alone. Did he hang? You said you never saw him hanging out with anybody. Was that his
Yeah, I
reputation?
mean, he was around us. For again, if it was 2 months, it was, that was a long, that was probably it.
Now, in general, what kind of person did you like? What was your impression of Nikolai in general?
So it's funny, man. Thinking about it now, and I've since you and I have connected, I've really kind of tried to jog my memory about it.
Mhm.
And we trusted each other, not me and Nikolai and all that kind of stuff. I mean, all the guys that we grew up with, we trusted each other, even though we were dirtbags.
Mhm.
I don't remember anybody ever trusting him. Ever.
Interesting.
And if I don't really remember anybody ever wanting him around.
For what reason?
Because he was an outsider, if you will.
When you mentioned that he just showed up,
Yeah.
It left an impression upon me. It's rather eerie. It's almost like an evil presence that just decided to come in, but from where and for what reason?
Listen, I could tell you the reason. The reason is that, we were doing criminal shit and he was a criminal, and like minds want to be with like minds, And
Now, did you know the first minute that he showed up that he was a criminal? Like, how did you know that
I
he was a
don't
criminal?
know. I think that anybody that kind of showed up on that corner at any given time and hung out,
Uh-huh.
there was there was something off about him.
Right. So, Eric, you got any questions real quick?
Yeah, I have a puzzle here. It seems like a lot of questions, 10, but it's really just one puzzle, and you just said we were the underworld, and there's different levels of the underworld.
Yeah, and listen, we weren't like the mob by any
No,
means.
no.
You know what I mean? But we were,
But you hear
we
things.
we were the kids that your mother told not to hang out with.
Yeah.
But even kids like you kind of hear things on the street because of the environment you're in, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to ask you first, and please, no names, I want to respect you. Did Nikolai particularly ever mention in any way that others who were his partners in crime? Was there ever a discussion you had with him? And if so, did you know them or hear also about them?
No, I don't remember him saying anything about partners or anything of that nature. Now, one thing that I kind of do remember is I think there was one kid that used to hang out with us. And oddly enough, this kid didn't need, like, a lot of us felt like we needed to be criminals.
Hmm.
We weren't, we didn't have that much money. I had a drug habit to support.
Hmm.
But there was this one kid who lived in the Century. And for anybody that knows, the Century is,
Oh, it's a luxury building.
yeah, it's like they got doorman, and I mean, it's
While you're
moving on
talking,
up to the east side.
while you're talking, I'll find it.
Yeah, and I think this kid might have done a job with him, because I'm pretty sure, again, my memory is they took his shoes from his apartment to try to match them with footprints at a crime scene or something like that. And I remember him getting his shoes back, and if I'm not mistaken, there was like numbers written on the bottom of the shoes. And if there's any cops in here, is that a thing, by the way, or am I just crazy?
Wait, I'm confused. This kid that was with Nikolai, they
So I
took his.
so I think during the whole Nikolai investigation,
Uh-huh.
they went and got this kid's shoes, thinking that he might have been on a job with him or something, breaking into a
Okay.
place with him or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And so they went to his house and confiscated a bunch of his shit, and they took all his shoes. And he got them all back, and he never got in trouble for anything or anything of that nature, but he got them all back, and they all had like numbers written on the bottom that the police had written on it.
Interesting.
Was
And this
this
was
during the period when the Bronx District Attorney's Office and the Harrison Police were investigating Nikolai?
So, so here's the thing, man. When I still don't know who Arthur Hunt, is that him?
Alfred Hunt
Alfred?
Howell.
Yeah, I keep wanting to call him Thurston Howell the Third.
He was a maven just like that. By the way, here's
Yeah,
the Century, everybody. Here's the Century.
I've never heard that name until you connected with me.
Okay.
Never heard that name ever.
And that boy whose shoes they examined, was he younger?
He was my age-ish. He might have been a year or two younger than me.
And
Right.
did you ever hear of Nikolai attempting to recruit anyone to be with him, possibly younger in age, female or male?
No, I didn't.
So, this is actually jibing, Eric, with our whole sort of thesis that's coming forth here, that that Nikolai was lying about having accomplices in this incident, at whatever happened at that house with Alfred Hunt Howell. He had originally said that two of his friends shot the guy, and he was hanging out outside. But you're saying to us that, generally speaking, he was not known to be part of a crew or have a lot of friends.
No, yeah, exactly. And looking back on it, he probably wore out I'm assuming he went from, for lack of a better term, corner to corner, or group of friends to group of friends, because he would just wear out his welcome. I mean, that's looking back now, we really didn't want him around, especially because, he was sloppy.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Meaning he talked about all the shit he was doing. We knew he was breaking into houses on Palisades. He told us about it.
So you didn't think he was a blabbermouth throwing the bull? He was.
No, he wasn't we didn't think he was a rat. If that's what you mean.
No.
Was
he claiming he did these crimes and he
never?
No,
we thought he was doing them.
You did?
Yeah. We thought he was doing them.
You see, what's perplexing, Manny, is that if he was alone and no one was with him, I'm wondering about the people that he pointed out without naming.
Right.
And we don't have so far, if they do exist, police reports. They would obviously investigate 6 people whom he said he was with.
It seems though as if Alex's observation about wearing out welcomes was true in my era as well as Alex's era, because again, Alex, he stole from my parents in 6th grade.
Yeah.
And I just spoke to another friend of mine who was in our class, and he stole from the reception of the bar mitzvah. This guy told me that while everybody was dancing on the dance floor, they left their purses and jackets on their seats at the table, and Nikolai was literally going from table to table stealing out of people's jackets in this bar mitzvah reception, and he got caught. And so then he lost all of those friends. So it sounds like this is a recurring theme in Nikolai's life to me, where he was friendly with people, and then he would do something to make them angry or screw them over or steal from them, and then they wouldn't be friends anymore with him. So it sounds like that was happening in your era as well.
A bad
Yeah,
seed
I
of a
mean,
mind. A
Let-
bad
let-
seed.
Alex? Let Alex finish. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, listen, man, we would tolerate anybody at that point. If, listen, we were all, users at that point. And I don't mean drug users. I mean, like we used everybody for what we could get out of them.
Right.
It's just that goes with that world, and there was an understanding that, kind of an unspoken understanding amongst the core of us that that's what it was,
Right.
you get what you can out of people, and if you got drugs tonight and I don't, I'm going to use yours and blah, 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 blah. And, and then next week it's the same thing. And it was a very symbiotic relationship with all of us that were close.
Right.
And, we didn't take, there was no way he was going to go to 231st Street and get away with that crap, because they would have murdered that kid.
Uh-huh.
They didn't want that around there. So
They
he
didn't
came
want
up to
what?
the softer side to try to, us to try to maybe get in. I don't know.
So what was he doing? He was hanging out with you guys?
Yeah, and it was funny. It was one of those things where, like, if I remember correctly, it was like, I didn't know this kid my whole entire life, and now I saw him everywhere in that Lincoln.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Like everywhere. Like all of a sudden the kid was just everywhere. Like, he was on Johnson Avenue, he was on 231st Street, and he's on the corner and all this stuff. And you're just like, where did this kid come from?
Do you think he was following you, or this was just a coincidence?
No, I don't think he was following us. I just think that, he was, I don't know. Yeah. I never felt like he was following us. I think he was, I don't want to say scared of us, but I think he also knew that, if he crossed one of us, he was going to get handled. And I don't mean murdered, everybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, he was just going to,
But there is something to that. I'm thinking about this now, given what you said before about how his building was just one little notch north of your territory, and he actually grew up around kids like me. He was a soft Riverdale kid. He was one of my crew, right? The kids who were growing up in fairly idyllic upper middle class households. We used to go to each other's birthday parties, Alex. So he probably actually saw you guys as not a ticket to anything, but like to give him credibility. He wanted that. It's almost like
probably some of that involved. Absolutely, there's some some street cred, if you will.
Right. Right.
There was probably some of that involved.
Hold on, Eric, ask that again, please.
Isn't there a similarity, therefore, with the other young man whose shoes were investigated? He came from a well-to-do.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's interesting because now you say they investigated him in conjunction with Nikolai. They both came from the wealthier side of the tracks. And for some reason, they entered into your environment, not necessarily part of your people intimately, but they were there. There was a presence. It's interesting how these two wealthy guys, and one is connected to Nikolai's crime eventually as being investigated, show up with you people.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely,
So I'm sorry, Alex.
No, go ahead.
So, all right. So Nikolai enters your realm. So now I'm starting to get an idea about what's going on here. He sees you and your crew hanging out. For some reason, he wants to ingratiate himself with you guys. In other words, he's the kind of subservient beta, and you guys were the alphas here. Is that a decent characterization?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was, but we were like Alpha B, like
Right, right. I
the
mean, how
kids on
tough
231st Street were really
they were the real alphas. Yeah,
they were the real alphas. And
exactly.
back
Like,
then there was, I don't know if you remember, there was Born Crazy. There was,
yeah,
those were the
BC,
gangs in the neighborhood,
CB. Yeah,
Crunch
yeah,
Bunch. Those were, and
ex-
we were like they were the world, and we were like the satellites around them, if you will.
right, right.
Um,
Yeah,
By
but
coincidence, when they started to show up around you, was there coincidentally any of your friends or people who were being arrested?
Um, yeah, I mean, somebody was always getting arrested for something stupid, and I mean, I don't, you know, I mean, one of the kids on our block was like the first kid that ever, there was some graffiti task force, and the idiot was like the first kid ever to get busted on the graffiti task force. He was all over the front page of the New York Times. He was, I was just because he was stupid.
Alex, I wanted to ask you about stolen goods
Yeah.
because you hear about things being stolen, different
Mhm.
objects, not just cars. Let's take gold. Do you ever know or hear of there being a conduit for selling gold, that there might have been a fence for selling pure gold
Yeah, I
objects
used to sell shit there all the time.
all the
so
time?
we're talking about T Fox. Now
Yeah, right on Broadway and 231st.
so this was in Nikolai's confession too. So this was a known fence.
Yeah, that was known. They didn't
And t-
care. They didn't ask any questions. You didn't have to fill out any paperwork.
How
and
do you know he was a fence though? Because it's advertised that he would. It was known that he would take stolen goods.
Yeah, I would take stolen goods there.
No,
But
Fox Gold.
no. But how did you know to even go there in the first
You
place?
just hear about it.
You just hear about it.
Yeah, you just hear about it,
Did Nikolai ever talk to you guys about this place?
I don't remember it with him, no.
Yeah, because he was saying he said in his first confession. Now he's given at least 3 confessions, Alex. So we're still trying to unpack that. All of which include accomplices, and now we're starting to get this impression of Nikolai as kind of this lone wolf character. That's very, very important to know. That was that. So this T Fox here,
Mm-hmm.
you'd go to the one on 231st here, 50,
Yeah,
not
Broadway.
50. Right. So you just so they would so this is actually very important. So there was no written record. The guy didn't care about anything, right?
Mm-mm. Nothing.
Okay.
He was in the Bronx, T Fox, or Manhattan.
Yeah.
In the
No,
Bronx.
yeah, Eric, if you look down here, sorry,
Right.
everybody,
Okay, I
Bronx
see
and
now.
Westchester. This is right here, 231st and Broadway. So that's right in our area.
Mm-hmm.
And Westchester.
Correct. They have a
Interesting.
Westchester. Here we got book club in the house. So let's get book club in. Alex, book club warrior, is a very, very important part of this investigation that we're doing. He's a former policeman, and we'll let him take it from here. What's up? What's up, book?
Hey, what's going on? Alex, nice
How you
to meet
doing,
you,
man?
Spent a lot of time at Luigi's. I went to Manhattan College, so I ate a lot of pizza there, put on a lot of weight the first semester because the food sucked. But no, I was just asking, when you started hanging out with Nikolai, was this around the time of April of, what was that, 96, when that went down? Like, how did you find out about?
Yeah,
So,
let's start getting into this.
yeah, if I remember correctly, he just poof disappeared.
Right.
And
Well, he probably
then
took
that
a collar,
kid-
and that was that.
and then that kid got his shoes taken.
Right.
And were you a cop?
Yeah.
Okay, so is that a thing? Or am I making that up in my head?
I mean, the only way I could see it is if they might have wrote like the voucher numbers on the bottom of the shoes, but normally you would put the shoes in a bag, but if they had just a bunch, so that's a possibility.
So
It's not beyond the realms of,
Okay.
it
So-
wouldn't be weird, because if you had certain items, like depending on if it was just a pair of shoes, it would just be in a paper bag.
yeah.
You know what
Oh,
I
no,
mean?
it was all of his shoes.
Yeah, well, they probably had a lot, so yeah,
Yeah.
they might have put the voucher numbers down on it. It's a good chance.
Okay. So yeah, and I remember like, because again, from what I remember, he was hitting multiple houses down there.
Right.
Like it wasn't just one, he just didn't break into this one house and 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 this whole thing went down. He was hitting him, and he was talking about it with us. He was like, I don't really want to say he was trying to recruit us, because
I mean, ultimately, I think he was a lone wolf, and he was looking
yeah,
to
I
be,
don't want to say
the
he was
top
trying
guy,
to
trying to
recruit
get some
us or
guys
anything like
involved.
that, but he would definitely talk about it, and
Now talk about what? About hitting
breaking
houses
into the
in.
house. Hey, I'm hitting this house down on Palisades. Blah 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 blah. Or I broke into this place. I remember that, and I don't remember specifics or anything. And then he disappeared.
So
And
he's
then
just
this
like
kid,
boasting to you guys, right? Maybe trying to,
yeah, and I don't,
he's casting a line and see if you're gonna like bite. Hey, you
so
want to get involved or something like that.
and none of us were, I'm not saying that we were above breaking into a house, but
Right.
we also knew that he was dumb when
Right.
it came to that kind of stuff.
Well,
and
if you're
we didn't
talking
know.
about stuff.
Yeah, and not that we were the these suavest criminals out there, but I mean, we weren't doing crazy stuff. We were selling nickel bags and shit, man. We
Right,
weren't,
right. You weren't doing anything violent. You weren't doing
no,
robs,
I mean,
right?
we
You
would,
weren't.
we get into fist fights on 242nd Street, but
Right.
who didn't?
Right, exactly.
I didn't.
Yeah,
Not
well,
yet.
yeah.
Nah, but you're not going out. You're not doing home invasions. You're not robbing
No, no,
people.
no,
You're
no,
not
no, no, no,
mugging.
no. Now I knew
You're
people that
stealing
did.
cars for joyrides. You're selling a
Wait.
little dope, whatever.
But I'm interested real quick. So he was actually saying that he was hitting houses on Palisades.
If I'm not mistaken, it was, it wasn't like, he was robbing houses. And
Now that brings me actually to a question I had about did he ever, and here it is, did he ever talk about the rich people of Riverdale? Did he ever like have any personal stories about these people?
nah,
Did he ever
I don't know. I mean, none that I recall, I quite honestly, man, I don't remember me being like, one-on-one hanging out with him like we were homies.
Right,
You know what
right.
I mean?
The reason I bring this up is because Mike Lorenzo brought up a good point. He said, "Manny, you should see if there's any connections between the houses that he hit." And so in this article from the Riverdale Press, it talks about him burglarizing 1 month after the Howell death. He burglarized 675 West 252nd Street. And I went to the internet, and it's very easy to find that, wow, that's Wave Hill. So he was burglarizing Wave Hill, which was started by this guy, Gilbert Curlin. Curlin was the first person to talk about Mr. Howell suffered a heart attack in his obituary.
Mhm.
These guys were buddies. So the kind of like what I'm getting at here is like, was Nikolai targeting this group of people, this clique? Did you know anything about that?
No, I did not.
Okay.
No, but I mean, everybody knew that, Palisades was rich people, man.
Right.
I mean, those were badass houses down there.
Let me just ask you another question. After he disappeared, right? Because obviously, the way the story goes, this case, Howell's killed in, April of '96, right, Manny?
April 23rd.
Yeah, April 23rd.
Right, but the case gets reopened again well after, back in like '97, where just to get into it. So in the meantime, after he disappears, I mean, you've had police contact, right? You've gotten collared in the 5-0 or no?
Yeah,
Right.
and nothing crazy. I don't have
nothing
record,
crazy, but what I'm
but,
trying to say is you
I've
took
been,
collars, right?
my parents
hold
had
on,
to come get me and, hop in the train and graffiti and all that
Right.
kind of dumb shit,
Right.
Yeah.
But either way, you took collars at the 5-0 precinct, right? You sat in the cells at the 5-0
Oh
precinct.
yeah. I sat there. I sat in a cell one time when it was I got busted on 207th Street, and they took me to the. It was when it was the train cops, when it was separate.
Yeah.
Right.
And there was like 143rd Street or something like that. I sat in a
Mhm.
cell down there. I mean, it was,
But what I'm trying to say is, when you were arrested after
Mhm.
Nikolai disappeared, did anyone ever, like, as after you got arrested, did anyone come and talk to you and ask you anything about, hey, do you know anything about,
You
a
mean like
murder that?
cops?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no.
Because all I'm trying to say is that at that point, once the investigation reopened, right, and then you get these. The best way to get information is from the street, right? The street has ears.
Yes, transit
Uh,
cops.
right. Yeah. So you get some punk, dealing a nickel bag. You grab him, bring him in. Hey, listen, you getting the DAT, you're going through. You know anything about this?
Yeah,
Do you know
and
anything about that?
listen, at the 50th, they used to go by a McDonald's. They buddy you up real nice.
Yeah. Well, they're making money off you. Always treat your perps good, but make it be
But
good
no,
if
I
they're on,
don't remember
especially
that.
if they're
And
on
listen, man,
overtime.
my time frame there, my timeline, I should say, again, man, it was 25 plus years ago, and I was a wasteoid in that time of my life. So, I don't remember, what month he disappeared. If you would have told me it was 1993, I would have been like, okay,
Right. But I actually want to take it back a little bit, because
Mhm.
clearly you were hearing rumors in the neighborhood, because somehow or other you told me in this oral testimony, the statement that you wrote to me, that well, let's just get to it. Let's actually deal with that. Let me get that up here. It says here that we
Oh,
knew
where he
he
hit
was
somebody
robbing.
with a lamp.
Yeah, we knew he
Yeah.
was robbing houses, and then the rumor was that he broke into a place on Palisade. So talk about this rumor. Like, when was this
So
happening?
yeah, and here's the thing: I don't remember if this was like before or after they took that kid's shoes.
Uh-huh.
So my timeline, I don't remember. I don't.
Okay.
But the rumor was, when we figured, when we not when we figured out, when we found out what happened, was that, yeah, he broke into somebody's house, and the lady was home, or some shit, and he freaked out and hit her with like a lamp or something and killed her.
It was going around that it was a woman, not a man?
Yeah, I think so. Or maybe that's just what we said in our head, like, some housewife, and he hit her with a lamp, and,
Do you
and
think
she
it
died.
was after it was out, like broadcast in the newspapers after the collar went down, the case was
Yeah, you know what,
reopened?
man? We didn't read the newspapers.
Right, but if
Right.
someone read it and then word on the street, and you're like, hey,
Yeah,
don't you
maybe.
remember
I don't
that
know.
dude? Remember that dude? He hung out with us for 2 months. That's the guy. He just got
Yeah,
pinched
like,
for.
oh shit, you heard what happened to Nikolai. I mean, that was
Right.
kind of how from what I remember, that's kind of how, it was like, holy shit, he killed some lady with a lamp. That's crazy. And then we went on with our lives. We didn't follow the case. We didn't follow
So
the trial and all that shit. Like, we didn't care.
You
So
don't
what I'm getting
remember if
from
it was 96 or 97, the rumor.
No, I have no idea.
well, that's what I was gonna say. It sounds like the rumor was going around after he got busted, not before he got busted.
Yeah, I mean, it must have, because he didn't, right? From what you're telling me, he didn't, like, originally it wasn't a murder, right?
Correct. It
Right.
was a
It was
natural
just a
DOA. Yeah, heart
so
attack.
Heart attack.
so yeah, it was one of those things like, oh shit, that kid Nikolai killed somebody. That's crazy. Up, and then squirrel, and we went on with our lives.
Right. So all right. So book club. It seems like the rumor wasn't going around like in '96 during this pre-period before he gets arrested or anything.
Right. Because that's what I'm trying to figure out too. I'm sure, shit rolled downhill after they opened up that investigation. So I'm sure the 5-0 was, hitting the streets, and, whoever they were grabbing up, detectives were coming down to talk to them. I'm like, hey, what do you know? Do you know anything about this? Did you hear something? Maybe we could work out a deal for you or whatever. So, that's why I'm thinking. And then once it hits the papers, then it becomes, fact. Like, people read the papers, and whatever the paper says, it's true. We all know. I mean, I can tell you right now, Nikolai was full of shit in half of his confessions, and he was probably full of shit in saying half the things, that he was burglarizing all these houses too. That's just my opinion.
Right.
So, anything he says, I really don't, I take it with a grain of salt.
I mean, I
But,
could 100% see that.
you
Him
know,
being full of shit.
maybe he's trying, he's trying to influence you guys to start a little crew, entice you, and then, telling some tall tales, and then, maybe trying to get you guys in and stuff like that. But, I mean, I'm looking at the chat. I'm seeing all kinds of other stuff in there too. I know Dom, to Flipso, he wants to. Did you ever see Nikolai with a girl?
No. And again, man,
Right.
it's one of those things where this was literally a blip on my radar, man. Haven't thought about it. So, I randomly joined that Facebook group about a week before Manny joined it. And
That's a
and
sign.
for no reason. I was like, yeah, that might be funny. Let me see if anybody I know pops up,
Right.
So
because quite honestly, a lot of those kids from the neighborhood, a lot of them are dead.
Mhm.
A lot of them are in jail.
Right.
And a lot of them I just don't want to talk to because that's not me anymore,
Right. Exactly.
And they're still 45, 50 years old hanging out on the corner.
So we actually have, in addition, of course, to Book Club, who has had a career in law enforcement. We had several questions from Mike Lorenzo, the legendary detective from up in Yonkers, who's right here sitting with Maria Neto, one of David Berkowitz's victims. So actually, this right here, was he a drug user? If so, what and how bad? You kind of answered that before.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just don't remember.
Okay.
But I don't want to speculate and say,
Right.
yes, he was, or no, he wasn't. But I mean, if you were hanging out with us, you were probably doing something.
Now this gets to what Book Club just asked. Did he actively date girls and any girls in Westchester?
I didn't know him well enough to answer that question.
Did he have an extended family, cousins? Were they of criminal ilk?
Never saw him with anybody.
You never saw him with anybody?
Not anybody that wasn't, somebody we already knew,
Do you remember, like, what would people say about Nikolai in the neighborhood? Do you remember, like,
there was nothing, because he wasn't even a thought on anybody's, until he showed up,
Right. But even then, when he showed up, he didn't come into your group. He wasn't really accepted, right?
No, I mean, he was always kind of an outsider, I mean, because he was, and I think, listen, man, there was something that used to be said, like, I mean, you're driving around a stolen Lincoln and you parked it on the corner. You double parked it on the corner. Like, the Book Club will know what this means. You're making the block hot.
That's right.
Right.
And there was kids that used to, I remember, kids would, they would come down from your neck of the woods, Manny. And, they would come down to the corner down there and, like, try to buy a bag of weed or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And then, like, they'd peel out on their way out in their, their dad's BMW. And then the next time they'd come, we'd smash their car with bottles and tell them never to come back.
Right.
Because you made the block hot, you fucking idiots.
Right.
We're trying to lay low out here, as low as we thought we could, and you're squealing off. And Nikolai was he made the block hot.
So another term you used for him was sloppy.
Well, maybe sloppy wasn't the right word, as much as, if you're doing all this shit, you don't tell people about it all the time. You just do it,
So Book Club, that's actually an interesting observation, because here you have Nikolai blabbing and talking, which is kind of
like I
like,
said, a lot of guys talk a lot of shit out there, obviously he got collared, for murder, but, most good criminals are never really going to tell anybody, especially maybe he's, like I said, that's why he's boasting to try to recruit these guys. But, again, that would have to, I would think it would take over time. Like Alex is saying, he was just there for about 2 months. That's, you still got to feel people out,
Right.
if you're going to bring them
Right.
in and do something like that. Maybe do some small time stuff with them, test them and stuff like that. But I think he was a wannabe. I think he was a lone wolf.
it sounds like he was a wannabe.
Yeah, and he's like, again, he's full of shit, and we know that he's full of shit.
Book Club, you did say something before that was interesting about when they started to investigate. Detectives would come, police would come to ask questions in the neighborhood, and therefore the rumor, if I understood you correctly, that's how the rumor could have passed from
Well, yeah, once they started investigating again, because again, we don't know why, but all of a sudden this case gets reopened on the authority of, maybe the Manhattan DA and all these elitists. So now the NYPD's got egg on their face. So it's just regular police work. If it happened in the confines of the 50th precinct, anybody you bring in whose pedigree is like, they live in the area, they might have heard something. So you're going to ask them questions like, especially if you got a young kid, you're going to say, listen, instead of going through the system, I'll give you a DAT. You ever hear anything about, something that happened at Palisades Avenue, an old man was murdered or something like that? Because the streets talk.
Right. Exactly. But there's a missing link here. I had overlooked this. Manny read it the other day and he said, yes, look at this. A source I'm with had found it. He's gone through the files twice. It could have been before it was officially reopened that police went there, because he had first been arrested by the 34th precinct in August of 1996.
Yeah.
Now who's this? Even though they can't officially reopen it, my source says they definitely had to report what he stated.
Yeah, I spoke to Manny about that. Because,
we're gonna have our next show on this.
Yeah, I mean, so they could have come and asked questions on their own. Someone there might have decided, I'm just going to go down there and see what I can find out what this kid has told.
Well, I have a different theory, but I'll wait on that.
Yeah,
okay. The only reason why is because the detective there was a famous person I found out, Gennaro Giorgi.
Right,
so,
Giorgio.
Everyone's famous. Everyone's famous.
So let's get Alex back in. Let's get the man of the hour in here. So I think we know the answer to this, but did Nikolai tell others about the quote murder, or was it discussed in the street talk amongst others? So basically the question is, in real time, was he hanging around you when this Howell thing took place? And did you hear about it in real time? Was word going around before?
You know what? I don't think so. I literally think it was one of those like, yo, did you hear Nick killed this? Somebody? No shit. Oh shit.
Yeah, after he made the papers.
So it must have been after he made the papers.
Yeah, I don't remember him like being like, yo, I killed some guy. I don't remember that. No.
Did you ever see Nick with a gun? And if not, did you hear that he had one?
No.
Okay. Did Nick have a rep? Did Nikolai have a rep as being violent or do stick-ups?
Not that we knew of, no.
And that jibes with what I knew, the Nikolai I knew, and I had a conversation with another friend of mine.
He was a slime ball criminal. He wasn't a in-your-face criminal.
Yeah, I just remember him being like a very sort of meek, nice kid. Yeah, he was a kleptomaniac, a stone cold thief at the age of 12 years old, and probably earlier. But he never was violent, and so you kind of knew that him to be nonviolent as well.
I mean, in the 2 months that he was around us, no, he wasn't. He never tried to start anything or anything. No.
Did he participate in Rolling Queens on the Stroll by Van Cortlandt and Broadway?
I don't even know what the fuck that is.
The gay community, was there any?
No, not that I know of. No, I didn't. I've never. What are the Rolling Queens? Is that like a gang?
No. Like Robin, the guys go over to Van Cortlandt Park. They're cruising, and then
the
a lot of times kids will just they'll become crime victims. They're looking to have a tryst, and there's kids waiting in the woods, and they're gonna just roll them. And they're not going to report it because the cops know why they were there. And,
all right. Yeah. No, I mean, we used to listen, the only thing we used to do in Van Cortlandt Park was throw keg parties in the stadium.
So you never, was there ever a rep of like any like rich people hanging out with in any way socializing? Like, did you or your group ever have anything whatsoever to do with the people who lived on Palisade Avenue,
No.
the elite? Was there ever any connection? Did they buy drugs there? So they never came to Greystone. You never saw them, never had anything to do with the rich elitists of Riverdale.
Not a thing. The only thing that we used to do on Palisades Avenue, I think I told you, was we would drive down there and turn your lights off at night and go really fast because it was super
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah, now they have a couple bumps on the road there,
Yeah.
so people can't do it as well. But yeah, totally. And then finally, did he ever hear or believe Nikolai to be Albanian?
No.
Did we not, like, we're still trying to figure out what he was. Do we?
But I
do we?
never, I mean, but it was also one of those things where I don't think we ever, I think we just thought he was Russian. I mean,
Russian, right?
Nikolai was
Exactly.
Russian. I mean, we always, but
It all-
no, we never, it never came up that he was Albanian because he would have been related to all the rest of the Albanians.
It all
Interesting.
points to him being Danish.
Right.
Definitely. But I mean, for an attorney at law to make such a mistake and write his name as Nikolaj and Amann with one N is pretty.
Well, that's getting into obscure stuff, Eric.
I know, but I'm wondering if there's an Albanian connection there. You see what I mean? Because as Mike Lorenzo said, there were two historical waves of Albanian migration to Denmark in the 20th century.
Well, unfortunately, this is one of the things we're not going to really know. So far, no one. It doesn't even seem like anyone knew Nikolai well enough to know this. So, is there anything we're missing in this story that we haven't heard?
Alex, were there
yet?
any Albanians in your little crew?
Oh yeah, all the time.
All right, so then they would have. If
My
he
dad
was
actually
really
wouldn't let him up in
Albanian,
the house. My father is Croatian, and they'd be like,
right? They would have
"Don't
did the whole
let those
cousin
fucking
crap.
Albanians in the house."
Yeah,
Yeah,
hey, cuz, what's up?
Right, they would have known Nikolai.
Yeah,
Nikolai would have known.
Yeah, no,
very,
that's what
very
I said. If he was Albanian, he would have known all the rest of the Albanians.
Yes.
They're all related, even
Absolutely.
if they're not.
So it sounds like Nick was a wannabe who wanted to be harder than he really was, who wanted to perpetrate as if he was a much more of a hardened criminal than he was, and hang around with rougher people than he was, but that nobody really accepted this guy. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
If he wanted to be accepted,
Right.
maybe he didn't want to be accepted.
Well, if he didn't want to be accepted, he would have been trying to hang out.
He wouldn't have been trying to hang out. So he was trying to recruit you guys to do these heists on Palisade Avenue?
Yeah, I don't know if it was so much recruit. I mean, he would tell us, and I mean, but if you're telling somebody, I think you would,
So this means
want him to do it with you,
Right. I'm just trying
I mean,
to
I don't ever remember him be like, "Come on, man, let's go hit this house up together." You know what I'm saying?
right.
But there was definitely chatter, and we knew what he was doing.
Uh-huh. How many houses did he hit on Palisade Avenue?
I don't know. I don't know.
After
hit
he
one,
showed
man,
up, were any of your people, did you ever, if you think back, after he showed up, were any of your people ever suddenly apprehended for anything?
I mean, I don't know, man. Like I said, somebody was always
Someone's always taking a collar.
something, I mean, we used to get, there was this bike cop dude that used to give it. I mean, I got so many summonses for playing CeeLo. I mean, just dumb shit.
Just to show you how soft I am. I don't even know what CeeLo is. What's CeeLo?
It's a
CeeLo
dice
Green.
game.
What is it?
CeeLo Green, right?
No, it's a dice game. It's like crap.
Oh, CeeLo. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
like
that's-
listening
well,
to CeeLo. No.
That's
See,
quality of life policing, the broken windows theory,
Yeah.
when the city was actually pretty good.
See, I'm such a sheltered Riverdale boy.
Yeah.
Alec, did any people come in from out of the Bronx involved in the underworld that you knew of or your friends were aware of, or the voices on the street? Perhaps not just about stolen goods, but was there ever any underworld person who might have been seen as a predator, like a pederast or pedophile,
No, none that we knew of. No.
seeking to prostitute even maybe young girls?
No, there was, you mean like a pimp?
Yeah.
No, that wasn't a thing up by us.
Nah, I think anyone coming around that area with you guys, you probably would have left with his tail between his legs.
Yeah, that wouldn't have, it's funny, man. There was, it's just like in prison, man. That's looked down upon.
Did you
So
ever
there-
hear any stories of crimes having taken place even in the past that are carried forth as tales, like at Van Cortlandt Park or Pelham Bay Park or anywhere else?
Oh, you used to hear all sorts of I mean, there was, we talked about the blue van that was abducting children. There was, the story about the guy that was, there was always stories about Satan worshipers in Van Cortlandt Park,
Right.
um,
Oh no.
you,
Flashbacks.
Manny, when him and I first connected, I was like, there was a lady that in Nikolai's building, and it was always an urban legend that she got stabbed like 30 some odd times in like 84 or something like that. And we never, and you always heard, oh yeah, my dad heard the screams, and turns out it was true. He found the article.
It was a lady who was stabbed 90 times, not 30. It was horrible. She was in a wheelchair and everything. That happened right in Nikolai's building. So, all right. So we're hitting an hour and a half, and I'm basically ready to turn it in. I want to make sure that we got everything covered. Book club, anything that we have not yet talked about that you want to find out about?
Nope.
Eric?
No, nothing more. In fact, some of my questions were already asked by Mike Lorenzo and subjects brought up by book club, so there's no use to be redundant at all. Just did anybody ever, as far as you know, Alex, did anybody ever say they had heard of him after he might have gotten out of the can?
No, we never. So again, man, I left the neighborhood in 2001. So, and when I left like I disappeared because I needed to remove myself from that situation. So I was out of touch with a lot of people. I joined Facebook about a year ago, and have since reconnected with a couple people that I grew up with. But I like Facebook. I can pick and choose who I want to talk to. And leave a lot of that life behind that I don't want to talk to. So as far as that, no, I mean, once we moved on, we never cared that, never heard what happened to him, never heard if he went to prison, never heard if he got out,
So my final question is just to basically summarize, fairly quickly, the Nikolai story. Tell us, just give us again a little overview, a little summary of your experiences with Nikolai and the thoughts that you had about him.
Yeah, like I said, man, kid was a blip in the radar of our life. Just as quickly as he came in, he left. Showed up. Was kind of a hanger arounder, if you will. We heard he was doing some dirt. And then we heard he hit some lady with a lamp,
Right.
And that was, and then gone, poof.
They said it was a lady, not a man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. It was again, in my head, for whatever reason, it was, holy shit, he killed some lady with a lamp or whatever it was.
Right.
You know what I mean? But there was no doubt about it that it was definitely a holy shit, he broke into some house and somebody was there. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what the story was. And he freaked out and hit her and she died and he's fucked.
Did anybody know more in the neighborhood without giving names? But did you ever hear?
No.
Was anybody ever like, oh, I know more about that?
No.
I know. Right.
No, and nor would they if they did.
Right. Well, all right. I mean, I think we basically squeezed as much as we could out of Alex. Is there anything that we're missing here, Alex? Any huge revelations? All right. Well, I think that this was valuable for many reasons, but the big impression that I get, and was good to know in this background information and book club, you may agree with me. It pretty much takes out the possibility of him working with other people on this job. It seems as though Nikolai was a lone wolf. Nobody wanted to hang out with him. He was considered sloppy, and so it gives us more ammunition to feel that he was alone in that house. Would you agree with that, Book?
Yeah, I definitely, even like I said, I don't want to, I've been looking at that stuff over and over again. So, the more I look at it, the more I find, but, conclusion is, yeah, I'm going to agree. He was by himself, and I'm checking out the chat. So a lot of people are going down the avenue that I'm going down as well. So.
What, that he was a lone wolf?
No,
type of thing?
alone, and other things too. I don't want to really blow anything up, but
Oh, right.
yeah. So I had said that right off the bat, and you'll attest to that. So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't think he was alone because we so far have no evidence of the other people he's fingering and pointing out where they live. We have no police reports unless they have.
they were alibied. A lot of different things that he said were proven wrong, and then at the end of the day, we'll just leave it at that. He already said what.
Exactly. All right. So we still have a mystery on our hands, but at least we have we know a little bit more about this guy, especially during the critical period of this time period when he was just basically, to paraphrase Alex, a sloppy criminal lone wolf that basically nobody wanted to have anything to do with. So I think that's valuable. All right, guys. So great show. Book club. Pretty much that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to take you guys off. Eric, any last words?
No, thank you, Alec, and nice to see you again, book club.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
What perplexes me most is the initial investigation.
Right.
That's what perplexes me.
All right, guys. So do me a favor, Book and Eric, please stick around. I want to say goodbye off the air.
God bless you, Alec, and your family, and you've shown great courage to go forward and overcome the adversity you had.
Thanks, man.
All right. So Alex, again, I want to say thank you so much.
Yeah.
There's definitely, we want you to be friends of the show. We definitely want to talk more, whether it's on the air or off the air, because maybe you can give us some background that we didn't think about yet, or maybe questions will arise that maybe you know about. So hopefully, hopefully you'll be cool with that. And do you have any final words for the audience?
No, man. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Nah, no problem at all. All right, so stick around. I want to just say goodbye off the air.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, thanks. All right, guys. Well, that was a great show. We're super happy to have Alex on. We're super happy to, of course, get a little bit more insight into Nikolai. It's important that any little story that we can get, that we get, because what we're trying to do with this video series is fill in the blanks, fill in the historical blanks. We had the issue come up of well, was Nikolai involved with anybody? Was he involved in an organized crew? Was he part of a larger network? Did he have accomplices in the Howell incident? And all indications say that no, that he was just a lone wolf, sloppy guy that nobody wanted to hang out with. And so that's actually a pretty valuable piece of information. So just a little bit more pieces of the puzzle, and that's what we're all about. All right, guys. Well, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Book Club and I are working on a show now, which I think is going to be fantastic. And Eric and I are working on a conspiracy angle show, which we think is going to be fantastic. So we're going to be bringing all this to you within the next week or two. And basically that's it. So I'm super happy to have brought the first oral history of Nikolaj Amann during the critical period in this episode 8 of The Strange Death of Alfred Hunt Howell. All right, guys, we'll see you at the next show. Thanks.